Welcome to the Ugly Truth. Thanks for tuning in. So I was watching TV today, and actually more specifically, I was watching YouTube, and I was watching a documentary about Chicago and the violence in Chicago. And we don't hear about Chicago too often. We hear about it every now and then. But I want to talk about Chicago. And I want to talk about some of the problems that are obviously in Chicago, but in my opinion, how those issues came to be and why it still remains this way in 2019, that these things are still happening in Chicago, in the greatest country, in the third largest city in the country. So let's get into it. So first of all, it's a known fact that Chicago is pretty much a city, well, a certain segment of the city, certain parts of the South Side, certain parts of other neighborhoods. It's a war zone out there, and people are getting killed every week. Certainly weekends, people dying in large numbers on weekends, 5, 6, 7, 8 people getting killed. Sometimes you have up to 30, 40 people getting shot on any given weekend or a week. And I think a lot of people kind of just dismiss this violence because the problem is that people don't see these people as human beings. They see them as animals, right? Because let's face it, it's a race issue. I mean, on a grand scale, right? It's a race issue. A lot of people see these black people and these brown people specifically as animals. They don't see them as full human, and they just write that off. It's not a real issue for Americans. It's an inner city black problem, and that is what it is. But I think this whole thing with Chicago is by design. Again, and I say these things, it's by design, and it's been in play now for the past probably 55 years. All this stuff started. I mean, really, Chicago has always been a city that's always had violence. Even going back to the mobsters. But I think when you look back to when these gangs were formed, the Vice Lords and the GDs and the Stones, and they were formed, and there was a centralized point of control back in the day. And these gangs control large swaths of the city. And I think a lot of these gangs, even including the Bloods and the Crips, they were put in place. They came about to kind of bring the community under control. And of course, there was some illegal activity associated with that as well. But it was an organization to control these neighborhoods. And in my opinion, the FBI, the CIA, they just saw it as a way to further decimate and destroy a group of people, to take out these heads. And I think a lot of people don't understand this is military strategy, that if you take out the head, then the rest of the groups within that gang become confused, and normally you'll have infighting. So I think this was by design. So you have these gangs in Chicago. The heads were taken out. So now what was centralized is now, it's not even decentralized. It's kind of really, it's decentralized. So now you have every gang is on each corner. And now you have a situation where, of course, the war on drugs came into play back in the late 1960s, early 70s. And the war on drugs was really involved with taking a lot of fathers out the homes. So it took all these black fathers out the homes. They went to prison, right? They're in prison. And now you're left with late 70s, early 80s, no fathers there. Then you have young boys, and they're raising themselves. The mothers can't raise them. And of course, the situation's so dire out there that a lot of mothers really aren't really mothers, because now, they're on drugs. A woman can't raise a young boy. So now these kids are being fathered by the gangs in the neighborhood, right? So here we are in 2019. We've gone full circle, where now There are grandfathers, fathers, and then there are the sons, all involved in gangs. And now these kids now, right now, they've been indoctrinated to the point where now they're almost like, well, they are. They're like street soldiers. They're like street soldiers out there. And they're fighting a war that they don't understand. Of course, a lot of it, again, it's the drug trade, fighting for money. And the problem is that America has not stepped in here and even tried to solve the problem. They have not tried to stop the problem. I mean, they have had more people die in Chicago than have died in the Iraq War since, I believe, it was 2004. There's no way that in America, in the third largest city, this could happen, right? See, what you have is a situation where you have this, and this is kind of going off another tangent, but you have a so-called opioid epidemic where white people are dying left and right. And now everyone's up in arms. It's the biggest thing ever. We have to help them. We have to help them. Let's not imprison them. We have to help them. But yeah, we have all these people who have died in Chicago because they're black. No one cares. So when people see that you don't care, when people have no hope because they live in economic dead zones, there are no jobs, there are no opportunities. And let's face it, if you don't have money, you have no mobility, right? People say, well, why can't you just move and go somewhere else? So that's foolish talk. If you have no money, you have no mobility. You can't go anywhere. You can't afford to go. You can just barely afford to exist where you are. So people are stuck in these communities. And the ones who can leave, the younger ones who may have some money from illegal activity, some of them have left. But I think a lot of them, their minds, that their minds are stuck. They're stuck on the streets. But anyway, let's get back to the main focus. The focus is that how do you stop this problem out here in Chicago? Well, it took 3 generations for it to come into play. You can't fix it in 1 generation. It just can't be done. You have certain people now, again, their minds are so far gone, you can't help these people. These people are going to have to be taken out of the way. They can't, they're gone. I mean, I guarantee you have people out there who would live in Chicago, who are part of this whole war out there. Certain people just kill. That's what they do. Their job is just to kill until they're killed. That's their job. So, how do we fix this? In my opinion, how to fix this problem is that, one, you have to have a police commissioner and a mayor who are about serious change. I really think, in my opinion, that for the longest time, and it came out to be true, the commissioner basically said, "Look, they have a hands-off policy out there. We're not gonna go and do any investigations. We're not gonna intervene. All we're gonna do is go out there and pick the bodies up and move on." And that's what they did. They allowed the killers just to go out there and kill. They said, "We're not gonna step in." That's crazy. That's crazy how you can just allow a group of people, which is a smaller group of people, to terrorize a whole city. Well, not a whole city, a certain part of the city, and kill with impunity. So you have a mayor and the police commissioner, police chief, whatever. They have to be about business. And when they do that, they have a serious program put in place to police the streets. And it's not going to take a year, not 2. It's going to take, it may take 5, 6, 7 years to see some real change. Because it took 3 generations to come into play. Then the next thing is, it's not just a police solution. What you're going to have is companies who are bringing jobs back into the city. You're going to have to bring certain types of opportunity into the city. You just can't expect people to put their guns down and put drugs down when there's nothing for them to do. They need opportunity. If there's a job for them to work, they'd rather go there. They don't. No one wants to sell drugs. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are people on high levels. Yeah, they make great money, but the average foot soldier out there, they don't want to sell drugs and put their life on the line every day between getting killed and going to prison. They don't want to do that. So have some opportunity. Bring opportunity back to Chicago. And with that being said, you're going to have to put programs in place, more after school programs. And of course, then again, there's no father there because the war on drugs is taking them out of there, it's taking them out the picture. But there needs to be a network of mentors that come into this city, that come into that area, and week after week, month after month, year after year, go out there and be a mentor to these kids who were a part of this gang violence. And it's only the younger generation you can touch. You can't help anybody who's 25 and up. They're gone. You know, if they're continuing to live their life, you just have to write them off just as collateral damage. There's nothing you can do with these people. But I'm speaking about the ones who are, say, maybe 25 and below, specifically more even 18 and below. The people who come out of prison, there should be a program. Inmates who come out of prison who are involved in gang violence should get paid, should get compensated to be a part of a program to help mentor these kids. And if they're serious about cutting gang ties, again, these guys who are released from prison should be paid, again, a mentorship program where they mentor young gang members, getting them away from gang activity. And of course, this has to work in conjunction with jobs being put into place in Chicago, which is opportunity. And of course, the high schools need to be revamped. I can guarantee you that these inner city schools out there are teaching these kids nothing. So they have no motivation. Again, if there's no motivation to go to school because you're not learning anything or they're not interested, then why even bother? How about changing the curriculum up in these useless schools, firing the teachers, bringing people in there who want to be a teacher and not just taking a paycheck, and change the curriculum up? Who cares? You need to try something drastic. So this old curriculum that we learned in high school, which was social studies, mathematics, reading, science, history, a lot of that stuff needs to be revamped. Kids don't care about this stuff. You need to revamp it to make them interested in things that they care about. Maybe it's videography. Maybe it's acting. Maybe it's music production. Maybe it could be something with the learning a trade. That's what they need to be doing in high school, right? It just speaks to this rigid mentality that we have at the top. Change is so difficult at the top. It's so difficult. But those are the programs that need to be put into place. Mentors, opportunity into place, changing school curriculum, and proper policing. And I think with those 4 keys, you're guaranteed to see change in Chicago within the next decade. But again, no one's really serious about this stuff because it costs money to do these things. And let's face it, it's a black problem to America, and they don't care. So until we see this as an American problem, well, I don't think it's ever going to be nipped in the bud properly. But hopefully I'm wrong. Anyway, this video is running long, and that's all I want to say about this. Thanks for listening. Please like it, share it. Thank you.